Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. Welcome to episode 210, where we preview the Detroit Lions 2025 season and react to the Lions' initial 53-man roster, which only has 50 players on it to start with. We'll talk about what we're expecting out of this Lions squad, and not just wins and losses either, folks. We're going to touch on some of that too, but we're also going to give our thoughts on the roster and the areas of strength and maybe, potentially, areas of concern. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is James Williams, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Coach Jerry Angers, a former Michigan High School Coach of the Year. He's also named Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions. He is the Scouting and Training Director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, it's about that time, man. We've waited a long time. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here. Man, that seemed like the longest preseason ever.
Well, when you start preseason with a game in July, it really is that way. Joining both of us is the Sports Writer of the Year for Community Newspaper Holdings Incorporated. That is James Cook, the Senior Sports Writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. James, happy to have you joining us as well as we get ready to talk 53-man roster-ish and preview the season for the Lions.
Hey, I'm just glad to survive cutdowns and be here with you guys.
Woo, that's a good one. I'm glad you survived that as well. Folks, as we get started, let's remind you to tell your friends and family about the show. You can follow us on all major streaming platforms. You just have to choose one. You don't have to follow us on all of them. And remember, we're on YouTube for the video option as well. Would love to have you guys subscribe, comment as well, and then social media-wise, we're mostly on Twitter and Instagram. All right, as we get started, we want to bring up a foundation we've talked about before in the past, the More Than Four Foundation, which talks about or helps spread awareness about pediatric cancer. Coach Angers, you've got some more information on that foundation and what's going on here soon.
Yeah, it's called More Than Four because only 4% of all cancer research is done on pediatrics. So Patrick Regan, a local guy from Traverse City, played at St. Francis, played for Michigan State's son has a rare cancer disease, and he decided he wanted to give back to the other pediatric kids. So there's a race September 20th in Traverse City. It's a 4.04K race. Think about the 0.04. You can go onto their website, morethan4foundation.org. That's morethan4foundation.org, and register to run it in Traverse City. It's a great cause, and they're looking to try to get 1,000 runners this year. So any support would be totally awesome.
Wow, that would be great, and thank you for bringing that up, folks. Please, if you have time, if you have the availability, check that out and participate. All right, some other news before we get to the roster is a former Detroit Lions player is in the news again, and that is Robert Porcher, former defensive end. He is going to be joining Pride of the Lions, guys, and he played for the Lions for 12 years from 1992 to 2003, and he was a force in his prime with the Detroit Lions. He appeared in 187 games, starting 158 of those. He had 95.5 lifetime sacks, double-digit sacks in 5 different seasons, and earned 3 Pro Bowl appearances. I actually reached out to Robert and was trying to get him on the show a year ago to talk about his draft day experience, and I've reached out to him again. We'll see if we can't get him here. But, Coach, what do you remember about Robert Porcher, and what are your thoughts on him joining Pride of the Lions, joining fellow teammates Lomas Brown and Herman Moore?
Oh, it's just great. And again, he's one of those one of the guys that just dominate on the field. You know, one of your players that you watched, one of your players that you enjoy. It's funny. I tell a story about Robert Porcher. I went and watched those guys work out one time when I was coaching. I got in with the strength coach, and he was in there working out. And I've never seen an individual human being that large, that big, work his hand grip so bad that he couldn't close his hands. And he almost had tears in his eyes, but that was just so that he could grab a hold of those people and throw them around as he tried to get clear his path towards the quarterback. So just very, very happy for him, well-deserving.
Awesome. Thanks for those insights. It is exciting to see that. James, I'm sure you remember Robert pretty well. What are your thoughts on this honor?
Yeah, he was just a very consistent Detroit Lion. I mean, one of the better defensive ends in the NFL for quite a long time. Uh, just a consistent guy. I mean, he was always generating pressure. He was a good run defender too, for a defensive end. I mean, he wasn't a guy who was just in there to get the quarterback. So, just a very stable player on that defense, and a great player as well. But I mean, just somebody who was just always contributing.
Yeah, he was always contributing. And his final season with the Lions, he played 14 games. That was the fewest number of games he ever played in a season. Otherwise, it was always 15 or 16. I mean, his rookie year, he didn't start that many, but he always played in every single game. So there is that consistency and that availability. So you're exactly right on that. Well, the Lions also are going to honor him the season opener against the Chicago Bears. So if you're going to be at that season opener, you will get to see that take place at halftime, I believe. Okay, guys, we're going to start with initial roster talk. We're going to talk about the guys the Lions let go, some of those moves, and then we're going to get into how this roster looks going into the season and how we think it stacks up against the rest of the division. So I wanted to start with the initial 53-man roster. Unfortunately, that is not possible because there's only 50 guys on the initial roster. And it's like, okay, this is crazy, this is weird, but we saw the Lions do 52 last year, and then they they got Trevor Nowatzki off waivers. So we saw an immediate reciprocal move. That being said, I don't think most people saw this coming, James. It's going with 50. And so what are your thoughts? What's your theory on why they went all the way down to 50 versus maybe keeping a couple guys and then letting them go if somebody else gets claimed in a corresponding move?
I mean, Brad Holmes has always been kind of doing this kind of gymnastics with the end of the roster towards the regular end of the cutdowns. You know, we went to 52 last year. Then they ended up getting a guy off of waivers, obviously, who's still on the team. And the 1 year their initial cutdowns, they had zero kickers and everybody freaked out. I mean, it's just the initial cutdowns, man. The first game isn't for a week and a half. So, I mean, there's plenty of time to make some moves, to get guys off of waivers, to re-sign some guys. You know, maybe they re-sign Skipper. They'll sign guys to the practice squad, obviously. But they got three more spots. The talk of the town is obviously going to be Zadarius Smith. Everybody's going to be clamoring for him, and for good reasons, because they only kept three defensive ends.
Yeah, that's a great point right there, and we're going to definitely get into that. Coach, I mean, is this a couple reasons? One is that they don't want to they want to make sure these guys, if they know they're going to not be there and they're not just going to wait for the corresponding move, it does give that player an opportunity. But what are your thoughts from the coaching's perspective and the GM perspective why they did this?
I mean, it's like he said, James said gymnastics. They're flipping around and doing whatever they want. They're on the uneven parallel bars, whatever you want to call them that. They're on the balance beam, and that's what they're doing. They do it, they do it every year because the first thing is they waive the guys they don't think are going to get claimed, so that they can keep other guys, and then they can use them whether they get them on the practice squad or not. And it's I mean, Hassan is the one that everybody's freaking out about. Again, great move. Now we could lose him. Sure, he could get signed, but who's going to sign him? I hate to go into an individual part, but who's going to sign him not knowing how long he may be out? Is he going to be out 4 weeks? Is he going to be out 6 weeks? Is he going to be out 8 weeks? So they took a chance, and I just love it. And the other one too, I'm going to bring up is Skipper. They're freaking out. Look at it from the positive, okay? Not the cup, not the glass is half empty. How about it's half full or three-quarters full, or wherever you want to look at it. If we cut Skipper, first of all, he's probably not going to get picked up on waivers. Second of all, that tells us that there are two tackles that are playing better than him, so our roster is better. Would we like to keep everybody? Yeah. And then if we keep Skipper and he gives up a sack and we lose a football game, it's going to be the dumbest thing we ever did. So granted, we all want Skipper back, but I love it. And like James said, we have a week and a half. Who cares right now? All right. We're not playing a game tomorrow. And Brad Holmes is going to take care of it. Trevor Nowatzki turned out okay for us last year, guys, and he was picked up on waivers. So anyways, he was another one of those guys that wasn't going to make the squad, but here he is again.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's some theories of why they did this. One is, Campbell in his more recent press conference talked about Aleem McNeil, Malcolm Rodriguez, Josh Pascal, and Miles Frazier all coming back from injury.
Mm-hmm.
If the Lions don't suffer injuries, and I know McNeil's not coming back for a while, you need to have a roster spot to put those guys on. So that probably comes into some of the calculus. If somebody's on the roster for week 1, their entire salary is guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a chance the Lions may pick up 1 or 2 guys, but not all 3. And they could go into that game in Green Bay with only 50 or 51 guys on the full 53-man roster, pull a few guys from the practice squad up for that game, and then after that game's over, make an addition or 2 as well. Do you see that as a possibility, James?
Yeah, that could totally be a thing. I mean, like we are talking about, with the cap next year, they're trying to save everything they can so they can roll over as much as possible. I mean, technically, right now, I think the Lions have the second most cap space in the NFL, so they could make whatever moves they want. But they want to save a good chunk of that money for extending guys and to roll over to next year so that they're not as hamstrung under the cap. So I think part of it could be penny pinching to do that. And part of it could just be that they have some eyes on some other guys that they thought were going to get released, and they did. So they're like, okay, well, we're going to put claims on these guys, and if we get them, we get them. If we don't, we can re-sign other guys, our other guys back. There's a whole bunch of things that can happen in the next week and a half.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out, Miles Adams, Tristan Colon, Tom Kennedy, Natane Muti, Anthony Pittman, Dan Skipper, Malik Taylor, they got released. They don't go through waivers. So a team cannot claim them. They're free to sign with another team, but also the Lions could have had a comment or a conversation with any of these guys to say, we do want you back. I mean, Coach, James, I sent you the thing on social media. Bears fans are like, we got to sign Dan Skipper right now, or, we're being stupid. And they're calling their GM out if he doesn't make that move. And so, we don't know what's going to happen with Skipper. He could be coming back to the practice squad. His time in Detroit could be over. We don't know that move. That'll materialize over time. But those guys are not subject to waivers. Now, everybody else is subject to waivers, obviously, except for the injured players that are there. But an interesting one is Ahmed Hassanin. Now, he was waived with an injury designation. And this is key because if another team claims him, he has to go on their initial 53-man roster. And that's a big deal because we don't know how long he's going to be out. I think the Lions reached an injury settlement. So if he does go unclaimed, then, the Lions pay him that amount. And then when he's healthy, he can return back. Now, James, correct me if I'm wrong. There's a little bit of risk here because the team could take him, but that team has to realize he might not be able to participate for 4 to 6 weeks or whatever. And they're giving up a active roster spot, and they're guaranteeing his salary for the season. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think I think with an injury settlement, you don't go through waivers because the Lions are essentially paying him for the amount of time that the doctor says he's going to be hurt for. So the Lions are paying him right now. So it's kind of a way to get around having to put him on injured reserve in a way, I think. Where they wouldn't have to use one of those injured reserve return spots, because
you only get 8 a year, right?
You only get 8 a year. You can only use 2 that are guys that are put on IR right now for the cut downs. So, remember how last year, how we were looking at dissecting that week to week. Okay, who are they going to be able to bring off of injured reserve because we only have 2 left, or and all that stuff. So I think that they're kind of really trying to keep those in case the same thing happens again. And so they've made it so they don't have to really use any of those right away.
That
They
makes
can
sense.
put some of those decisions off. They can let Hassanin get healthy, and then they can just re-sign him. He's essentially a free agent, I think, right away. And then they can just re-sign him after he is declared healthy by the doctor, and then he can just rejoin the team. They don't have to use an injured reserve return spot.
And I do think the Lions are being, really careful about that, Coach, because Dan's already talked about how that has affected them from last year, thinking about that they want to make sure everything's available. And James, again, Hassanin was waived with an injury designation. So I'm pretty sure he is subject to waivers. He will go through that, and the team can claim him, but then they would be then the Lions wouldn't pay that injury settlement. I believe he would go to that team. So, but if you find something contradictory, please let me know about that one, Coach. You know, the injury thing. You know, makes sense what the Lions are doing to kind of keep all options on the table. So November, December, they've got options available.
Yeah, I mean that, and that's the thing too with Hassan is if we let's look at the negative part, or if we do lose him, which is what 85% of the people on the internet and social media are freaking out about. Oh my God, bring him back! Yeah, he's my. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say how much I like him because he'll get hurt again. But anyways, and so if we do, there's probably somebody out on the wires, that we can grab if somebody grabs him that we can use down the road. Plus, we have help. You guys had already established it. We have help coming as our guys return off of the IR, and we have guys that can play that position, that DN position, like Wingo and stuff like that. So I think it was just a great move. I think it's just them uh, basically stacking the deck in our favor. And if we lose them, we lose them. And they're gonna be sad. We're gonna be sad, but that's part of the game. But again, Gil, let's go back to how good is our roster now when we're losing guys like we're losing. And last year we didn't, there was a few, God, we hope he stays. We hope he stays. Now we're looking at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys going, how did we cut him? How did we cut him? I mean, that's, what? That means we got a good football team. It's not that Brad Holmes isn't very smart. It's that we have a good football team.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the cuts, though. Some guys got cut that we didn't expect to get cut. And my theory on this is I'm gonna pull out the fantasy football theory, folks.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The guys on your roster are more valuable in your eyes than they are in the other people's eyes when you're trying to trade and stuff like that, right? So maybe to Lions fans, some of these guys had more value. I'm going to point out Isaiah Williams, the guy that we had last year. He did get cut today by Cincinnati. All right. There's a number of guys around the league that got cut. And let's so I think that might apply to some of the guys that we bring up. That being said, James, you brought up how many what's the percentage of players that get claimed on waivers after the initial cut down?
Less than 3%.
Yeah.
It's like 2.7 or 2.8% over the
Right.
last 2 years. So yeah, so it's not much. So yeah, Hassanin does have to go through waivers, but it's pretty unlikely that anybody is going to claim a guy who's hurt. They have to put him right on their 53, a guy
Yep.
who's hurt and going to be out for a month or two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Lions could bring him back though. Whatever when you do the injury settlement, there's the forms that you put with the league has a thing from the doctor saying how long the injury was supposed to take. So the Lions can bring him back at that plus 3 weeks.
And when we've all seen the draft video, this guy's not interested in going to another team. He wants to come back to Detroit. So unless someone's going to claim him, which again, to put somebody that's going to be out for a month or two on your active 53-man roster is an extremely low probability.
Right. And then they could also just sign him to the practice squad initially. And since he is the international pathway player, he would be free.
Yeah.
Not
Okay.
cost-wise, but he would not cost them a roster spot. They would have an extra practice squad spot for him.
All right. Well, let's start breaking down some of the moves. We'll start with the first one that is probably got a lot of attention. 4 weeks ago, I never would have thought this would happen, but Hendon Hooker was released. He was cut. He was waived. And I'm not surprised, though. 4 weeks ago, I didn't see it coming, but 5 days ago, I was like, you know what? I think it's happening, even maybe 2 days ago. So it's unfortunate, but it is where it is. Coach, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on this move? And then James will move over to you.
Yeah, it just, and we were pulling for him. I was pulling for him every week. Come on. I mean, every time he got in there, I'm like, please lead us to a drive. Please lead us to a drive. Just because, he's an ultimate professional. I thought he worked hard. I mean, we watched him in camp that day, and he threw the ball well, and he showed signs. But a change of scenery, like Dan Campbell said, he just, for some reason, it never clicked. He lost that first year, then the next, last year, and then this year they gave him some opportunities. He just never. And again, he wasn't throwing with the best guys. He didn't have the best guys blocking for him, not making excuses, but he didn't make the plays. He made, those two big fumbles in the one game, and it's time to move on. Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes both said, hey, of course, that's the worst draft that we've ever had now because we lost a third round pick guy. Well, that's part of the NFL. Sometimes they just don't pan out. And I wish him all the best. And maybe he comes back in practice squad. Who knows? But I, wish him all the best. And we'll be rooting for him no matter where he plays, as long as it's not against the Lions.
For sure. And I guess I saw enough in preseason with Kyle Allen's ascension and Hendon Hooker's lack thereof that this doesn't surprise me. And I think for right now, for this season, that is the right move because, James, you're not going to use the third string quarterback this year. He's going to take up a roster spot, which, as Dan Campbell talked about, that would mean you're going to go one shorter on the D line or the O line or the defensive backfield. So what are your thoughts on the Hendon Hooker being waived?
Yeah, I was pulling for him too, and I thought he was going to be a guy that was going to make the team until that last preseason game, and then I just was kind of like, this is not looking good. There's 3 stats on Hendon Hooker in the preseason: 20 drives, 3 points, 5 turnovers.
Yeah,
Not that's just not good. He missed that first season with the injury. The second season started out with the concussion, so he missed a bunch of time with that and just was never able to get on track.
yeah. And, there's a guy that I was like, well, he's totally going to get claimed on waivers if he gets cut. But you know what? Tyler Huntley got cut. Jake Hayner, the guy drafted right after Hendon Hooker, got cut today. Tommy DeVito got cut. And I thought I read that Tyler Heineke may have been cut. Yeah, there's a lot of quarterbacks that got let go, and there's others that I didn't even name, Kyle McCord. And so there are a number of quarterbacks who have shown better in the NFL than Hendon Hooker has. And so what it does come down to is he didn't progress. It was going to take up an active roster spot. And so it didn't work out. And we'll talk about some of that when we talk about Brad Holmes' overall drafts once we kind of go through some of the cuts. But any other thoughts on, I fully expect the Lions will sign a quarterback to the practice squad. Having 3, that's going to make sense. I don't think it's going to be Hendon Hooker, though, because Campbell talked about maybe a change of scenery is needed. And so are you guys kind of both in agreement on that?
Yeah, you have to have that third quarterback to run scout team. I mean,
Yeah.
And then it's not going to be Hooker, right?
No.
Right. Yeah, you need a third quarterback for practice, and I don't think it's, judging by Dan Campbell's comments, it's not going to be Hendon Hooker because the comments that he said were almost the same as he said about James Houston on the way out.
There you go. And people are going to say he blew that pick, and well, if you get the pick right, yeah, if the person does well, you did well, and if they don't, you didn't. But there are a number of variables that go in, and it didn't work out. At least we didn't take him number 3 overall. I mean, the 49ers did that. They're just lucky they happened to draft a quarterback with the last pick, and he did well. And so, it happened. And I know that draft, as you alluded to, Coach, the first 4 picks, those guys are generational guys in a way, with Gibbs, Campbell, Laporte, and Branch. The last 4 are no longer on the team, but I'll still take that.
Third
50 is pretty good in the NFL.
Yeah.
Right.
Third round was pretty good this year, I think. So we'll see.
Yeah. And also, guess who made the Dallas Cowboys initial 53-man roster?
James Houston did.
James Houston.
Yeah. Good for that guy, except when he
Happy
plays
for him.
us.
Yes.
So, yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about Brad Holmes and drafting in a little bit. Let's jump over to wide receivers, though. They kept Dominic Lovett. They let Jackson Meeks go. It's the same decision Georgia made. Um, I think it might surprise us based on what we saw. And again, we kind of talked about, Isaiah Williams last year was a guy that we kept, and then we lost to waivers. Now he's been released. I was surprised that Jackson Meeks got let go, James, but it's a situation where somebody may claim him or he'd be a practice squad guy. Were you surprised about this move?
I was kind of surprised. The more I was thinking about it, and I was putting together my own 53, I was keeping Meeks. And but I think other moves kind of necessitated that. Obviously, there's more things coming, so they thought they needed that spot. And I guess the other thing too is that I've seen some quotes saying if Brad Holmes thinks they're going to make it through waivers, they're probably going to make it through waivers. There's been a couple of exceptions to that. Obviously, Isaiah Williams and Trevor Nowaski, and I think Starling Thomas. But
Yeah.
aside from those, he's kind of gotten his guys through to the practice squad. So. I think that they're figuring that no team is gonna that the wide receiver is not kind of that position where you can just sign a guy off the street and play him that day, nearly as much as other positions, like the Lions were doing with defensive tackles. I mean, you can
Yeah.
do that a little bit with a defensive tackle, but doing that with a wide receiver is not really as feasible. So I don't see somebody putting him right on their 53.
And I'm going to take your statement and go a little bit deeper on that, James. I agree. If Brad says a guy will clear waivers, he will. It doesn't mean Brad's not releasing a guy and saying he might not clear waivers. When Trevor Nowaski had to go back through the waiver process to the practice squad, it doesn't mean that Brad was wrong. He did it knowing that's what they had to do for the roster, and he could have been fully aware that this is a guy we might actually lose. And so we just don't know. Just because a guy does get claimed, it doesn't mean Brad was wrong. He may have been right and knew he had to take that risk based on it. But you are right about that it is very calculated here, Coach. And you've put rosters together. You've seen rosters. You understand the depth part. And so, I mean, keeping 7 wide receivers, I mean, when we kept 4 last year, it sounded like, it would set you up great for a year from now, but you're Coach is 1 week at a time, folks. So don't talk to him about 2026. So this makes sense to you, even though you like the way Meeks looked, right, Coach?
Yeah, we were texting, remember, a couple of weeks ago, and I said, you guys, Meeks was tearing it up, and I think I brought up, I said, but Levitt can play special teams, and that's
Yeah.
how you make it in this league as a rookie. Anybody can catch passes. There's a ton of guys out there like Meeks, and I'm not talking Meeks down. I'm just
Nope.
saying, and he is a stud. He'd be great to have around, but can he get down and make a tackle? And that's the difference. And that's why he lost out on that. Hopefully he gets back in the practice squad for us, and we develop him for a year now. But there's St. Brown, he doesn't go down on special teams. J-Mo doesn't go down on special teams. Uh, Tesla goes down on special teams. He's a rookie. He's pretty damn good, right?
Yeah.
Tim Patrick a little bit. So that's the way to make it, and that's the difference. And I think he earned that in OTAs and prior to that. So I think that's why they did it the way they did. And who would they lose first? The receiver that can play special teams.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And again, that's probably why, again, the Lions drafted Lovett over Meeks as well. And there's a reason. And Coach, that might very well be it, is that versatility with the special teams thing there.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about wide receiver, we talked about quarterback. Broderick Martin's the other big name, former 3rd-round pick. He might get claimed on waivers, folks, just because of his size and where he plays. And James, you kind of talked about where you can grab somebody and plug. None of us are surprised about him. And then Sorso got injured and he's gone. Martin just didn't, we knew he was going to be a developmental thing. It just didn't really pan out the way the Lions had hoped. And so he was waived. Your thoughts on those guys, James?
I sort of was a little bit surprised on Martin. I kind of changed my tune. That last game, he put some decent pass pressures up. I think I saw a statistic that he was the second highest rated pass rusher in the preseason with over a certain number of snaps, something like that. So he He was doing that, so he must not must have been something in practice, or he wasn't playing the run they liked, or something. But he's a guy that I think if he doesn't get claimed by somebody else, they'll definitely try to bring him back to the practice squad because obviously Brad thinks that he has a lot of untapped potential. I mean, taking him in the third round.
Okay. Uh, Coach, any other thoughts on Martin or Sorsdahl?
I mean, I think Martin too was, he was injured last year too, so he lost that part of the time. And yeah, I think he had some splash plays, like you said. We were all like, hey, that was a great push. That was, oh, he almost tipped that ball. I almost did that. But the point is, were the plays that weren't splash plays, were they perfect? Were they graded well, from the D lineman? Was he not filling a gap and things like that? So and I think we go back to we have people coming back and we brought people in and Pat O'Connor and Schmitty, Chris Smith freaking did some good stuff for us last year. And so he had a big hill to climb and he just didn't make it to the top.
All right. Well, we also talked about the roster a little bit. I didn't mention running backs. The four guys we expected to make it did make it. Gibbs, Montgomery, Reynolds, and Vaki. And I want to caution you, if you are going to the roster on ESPN for the Detroit Lions, and I even hit refresh just to make sure.
Yeah.
It lists Justin Jackson as a running back for the Detroit Lions right now, folks. That is not accurate, okay? So I don't know why or how that happened. And again, I hit the refresh. It's got only two quarterbacks on here, so it's accurate with that. And it's got the 6 receivers, and it has the 3 tight ends. But for some reason, it's got him in there. So
Well, he did retire as a Detroit Lion.
Yeah.
He did. And speaking of errors, did you guys? I'm gonna throw this in quickly. Did you guys catch the last preseason game with the Lions?
Yes.
Did you notice they did a drone shot from outside the stadium? Did you notice that at all?
Yeah.
You got to, if you recorded it, go back.
Yeah.
Look at the trees. There were no leaves on any of the trees,
Oh, okay.
which
Well,
means they took that from I don't know when, but they didn't take it from last week because there's plenty of leaves on the trees right now.
Fall came in early in Detroit, so
I mean, the weather feels like it's fall, but I pointed that out and I was like, I backed it up to show my parents because I was over at my parents' house for my mom's birthday, and it was like, dude, yeah. So somebody just found stock footage and used it.
yeah.
So, all right, let's talk Dan Skipper a minute. We already kind of touched on him a little bit. He is a guy that could end up on the practice squad, or his time may have left in Detroit. Jamarco Jones, who has had the injury nagging things here and there, I guess, apparently outplayed him and outrepped him. Skipper did have a rough training camp from other beat reporter reports is what I saw, James. What are your thoughts on Skipper being cut? I mean, obviously he doesn't subject to waivers, so this could also just be roster gymnastics, and there could be a conversation the Lions already had with him.
It totally could be. I can see that happening. It could also just be that Manu and Jamarco Jones outplayed him, and Jamarco Jones is a younger guy, has a lot of upside in the NFL. Obviously, Manu has a lot of upside, and so I mean, if those guys both outplayed Dan Skipper, that's got to be pretty good for that roster.
Yeah, and Coach, you already kind of hit on that, kind of alluding to the same thing, right?
Yes. Oh, for sure. I mean, and again, Manu, he's probably gonna get claimed. Skipper's
Oh yeah, if you cut him,
Skipper's probably not gonna get claimed. Somebody's gonna say we're gonna take that big dude and put him on there because he's almost cracking the lineup. But I think he was outplayed. We talked, I sent out, Skipper's not young, right? What is he, James? 30?
30.
Yeah. I mean, you got to remember he was on practice squads for 6 years, and so he's lived there. So yeah, he'd be a prime candidate to go back to because I know he don't want to leave Detroit.
Yeah. Last year was the only time in his NFL career where he made an initial 53-man roster.
Yep.
That right there, that heart of not giving up. I mean, we all saw the Hard Knocks where he's talking to Campbell and he's like, what else could I have done?
Yeah.
And Campbell's like, you've done everything. So no matter what the rest of his story looks like, he's written a pretty darn incredible one so far. And that's incredible. And that is something that you should look up to if you're someone who is trying to accomplish something and you keep not quite getting there. Look at the Dan Skipper story.
Yep.
All All right, guys, there were a number of younger guys who did not make this. There are a lot of guys that we were like, hey, is Keith Cooper going to, not Keith, yeah, Keith Cooper, is he going to make it? And by the way, Kay Cooper did subscribe to us on YouTube last weekend. So I don't know if it was him, but we did get one. But that's a guy we were looking at. We're like, maybe, you saw Eric Hallett out there. We saw Kennelly. Those are a few names that we were looking at. Coach, is there a name or two that kind of surprised you that you were maybe hoping would make the initial?
Nick Whiteside, of course, but
Of course.
And again, I think that here's a couple things when you got to look at that is when Dorsey came back, I knew that Nick was probably in a little bit of trouble because Dorsey's been around, but from getting cut, Strickland and Norris, of course, he come back from that injury and stuff like that. But, when I look at those DBs, Hallett, we talked about him last week and all the different positions he was playing. But, what people keep forgetting is who else was playing safety? Rock was playing safety. And Maddox can play safety. So right now, you take those two guys, and we can throw them in at a corner spot or at a safety spot, and so that makes our depth a little bit more, and it gives us an opportunity. Maybe there is somebody else out there that they're going to go after. So, and I'm hoping and praying every day that Nick and Hallett and those guys get put on the practice squads because, or get claimed. Hopefully not.
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? I want them with the Lions because I know they can help us. And Nick is a prime example. Came in and took a great opportunity and that. So, but again, you got Rock and you sign Rock and Maddox, and then you get Dorsey back, and now you're looking at those are three experienced guys that can play multitude of positions. So that's kind of where I think we lost out on those guys.
All right, James, how about you? Some of the younger guys that maybe surprised you.
I was kind of surprised that Lynn got cut, especially with the other defensive ends that got cut. I thought maybe they would keep him as kind of a designated pass rusher, even though he seemed to be pretty decent against the run in the preseason as well. Only Jamar Jefferson and Chase Lucas have been the only other two guys drafted by the Lions under Holmes that he's released on cutdown day. Both of those were like a year or so later, and both of those were signed back to the practice squad and stick around for like another season or so on the practice squad. But so that's kind of interesting with the Hooker and Broderick Martin releases, and I guess a little bit with the Hassanin, which leaves them with Al-Qadim Muhammad as the only backup defensive end.
We know they're not going into Green Bay like that, right?
I would think not, but it also makes me wonder, okay, are they thinking like 3-4 defense because they kept 6 linebackers? Are they going to do that some of the time? I've heard that they might throw that in there sometime, and they've got the big defensive tackles who can play end. So maybe they are looking at a more versatile defense and being able to do that. But I expect them to pick up another defensive end for sure.
Yeah. And one of these guys will likely, again, if someone doesn't get claimed, like Coach was saying, if they don't get claimed and put on someone's 53 man, and the odds are you're going to come back to the Lions for their practice squad if they want you. I would fully expect Nate Lynn to be one of those top candidates to be on that practice squad and likely called up for that very first week 1 game against Green Bay. And so we'll have to see how that kind of shakes out there. So, because that defensive end, they're really short there. Defensive tackle, I think we kind of all expected that. Reeder, Tyleek Williams, Lopez, O'Connor, and Wingo, and then you've got Chris Smith in there. And then the 6 linebackers looked the way we thought they would. Coach, did you want to weigh in on either the defensive line or the linebackers?
Yeah, one of the things let's talk about Chris Smith. Chris Smith was a UDF guy, right? 3 years ago. Okay. And he just kept practice squad up. So that's these younger guys that got cut or waived, this time the undrafted guys. Chris Smith's a prime example. He's on the 53 man now. Granted, that happened because we have a couple guys injured, but my point is that he just kept grinding, and now he's part of that. Nobody saw that coming. I mean, guy was pulling for him the first couple of years as a Notre Dame fan, and so that's kind of a neat thing. And then linebacker wise, let's go back to that edge. They love those big edge guys to set the edge, but they also have a Sam backer position that number 53 plays really well, and Barnes plays really well that come off the edge. Okay. And you saw it in a couple of the games. They were they didn't show a lot in preseason, but you could see, I saw a couple cross blitzes with Stewart and Trevor on the timing. And I think that's the one where Broderick Martin got the sack. I think it was Broderick Martin or maybe Okuda, whatever, one of those guys. And so those are some things that you got to think about. Yeah, they're going to bring another edge player, but good for Chris Smith. Hey, kept grinding, and now he's on 53, man.
There you go. And I think you were thinking of a Gude, not a
Gude. I say that all the time. It drives me
good.
crazy. Yeah. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, any other thoughts on the roster, or we're going to jump into the season preview, guys? All right, let's hear. I hear nothing, so here we go. Let's talk about the outlook for the Detroit Lions this year, and we will get to the other teams in the NFC North as well. Folks, we're actually going to have separate episodes previewing Minnesota, Green Bay, and Chicago. We will hear from reporters from each of those teams that have covered training camps for them to get firsthand accounts of what those teams are looking like and what they expect them to be. We're going to look at it from the Detroit Lions angle. How does this Lions squad look, and how do we think they're going to compare going up against these teams in the division? So let's start areas of strength. Coach, what do you think the Lions' areas of strength are going to be?
The full roster.
Collective. I like that.
Collective. I mean, they're full. I mean, that's the thing is like, Dan Campbell's talking about it. We just talked about, hey, we let some guys go that we can't believe we're let go. We let, a guy go that played a ton for us last year. That was the third tackle, a sixth lineman, and, and things like that. So, I think our area of strength is, I think our DBs, our backers, that linebacker room is solid as it is can be. And look at the guys that we may put on the practice squad. And then, and then the D line, once we get healthy, the D line is going to be pretty dominant, and we stay healthy and get healthy, but, corners and safety wise and backer wise is strong. Our offense is our offense. I mean, we got Jared Goff, we got a couple running backs that are pretty decent. They'll probably have a couple 100-yard games, maybe once or twice this year. And our wide receivers are okay. And our tight end's okay, and the offensive line's going to have to improve, but it's collectively. Dan Campbell said it's the best roster they've had in 5 years, and I don't disagree, but we won't find out till Sundays.
Yeah, I think the two things, the collective word right there. I mean, like you said, Campbell said it's the best roster he's had in their 5 years here, and when you look at what they did the last 2 years, that is saying something. And as we've talked about before, many of these players, and Campbell even said it, many of these players are in their ascension stage. They're still growing and getting better and having that ability. And the squad as a whole, as a collective, is that talented. So I would agree. I mean, that would be the strength as well. You can take out certain positions, though, if you want. James, where do you want to go with here on the strength?
I would agree with you guys both. I mean, the whole roster, 1 to 50 as it stands right now. When was the last time you can remember that a Lions team did not have an undrafted free agent make the first roster?
Yeah.
That's how good this roster was put together.
Yeah.
They had a pretty good class of undrafted free agents, and none of them cracked the team.
Mm-hmm.
Isaiah Williams, he was undrafted free agent last year that made it, but then didn't last, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But you're right. And I mean, and technically we cut a draft pick.
Yes.
I mean, we waived Hassanin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we cut multiple recent draft picks. I think that's the big thing right there, guys.
Right.
So, I know we're in the season preview, and I guess we'll talk about Brad Holmes at the very end, okay? Because we got to get back to Brad Holmes, which I forgot to bring up. But, yeah, that does make this roster really good. Let's talk about Brad Holmes right now, actually, because we're talking about the roster. I know we're in the season preview. Just go with us, folks. All right, so he's going to start getting some shade thrown his way. I mean, you just let a couple third-round draft picks go. Hendon Hooker, you failed, at that spot. Same draft pick, Broderick Martin. Kobe Storsdale, your 5th round. Does he warrant a little bit of this, James? Does he deserve, some criticism on hey, you didn't draft another defensive end this year, and I mean you got Hassani in the 6th round, but you missed on Hendon Hooker when you could have taken somebody else. I mean, what are your thoughts to some of the criticisms that you were likely to be hearing?
I mean, well, you can critique general managers all you want, but I mean, what Brad Holmes has done overall is masterwork. I mean, if people think Bill Belichick is this great general manager when he put the Patriots together, during their dynasty run, but if you look through their drafts, he missed over 50% of the time.
Yeah.
He just traded around so many times and accumulated extra draft picks because he knew he was going to miss. So he gave himself more shots. So, he missed on a lot of draft picks. Brad Holmes has missed on very few, and the ones who have missed injuries have contributed, I think, pretty greatly to those.
All right, Coach, what about you? I mean, I already know where Coach is going on this, but I got to hear it.
We didn't draft a DN. We didn't do this. We didn't do that. Oh my God, we're not doing this. Oh my God, we didn't. Guys, we didn't need to draft a DN. We got probably the best DN that just came back off a season-ending injury last year that was out of pace to shatter every record. And again, we talked about a lot of records last year. I'll take the sack record. I'll talk about that one. The pressure record. I'll talk about that one. The quarterback hits. I'll talk about that one. And so it's just funny and that's what I'm laughing at, because it's that was some of the social media stuff I was reading today. Oh my God, we let Hassani go, and oh my God, we didn't draft the DN. And I'm thinking, Hutch just came off the injury. There was a Hutch rule in practice. There was a Hutch rule against the Miami Dolphins because nobody can block Hutch. And so if nobody can block Hutch, that means you have to put 2 and 3 guys to block Hutch, chip Hutch, stop Hutch, which turns the other guys loose. So I'm just let's see how it works out, guys. And we were 15-2 last year. I don't know with 16 injuries, but anyways, I can go on and on, but we got to move on. Sorry.
No, but I'll wrap it up and I'll say, James is right. It's fair to critique anybody you want.
Sure.
And I said this a year ago, though, which is, show me a better time period where anyone's ever drafted for the Detroit Lions than what we have seen since the 2021 draft. I'll say that. No, people are going to miss. And, did he miss often in the 1st and 2nd round? I mean, Levi Onwuzurike is your biggest question mark, and that was his first draft for a 2nd-round pick. And I guess Josh Pascal. But no one's perfect. Guys, I'm going to bring up a stat. I'm going to leave I'm going to leave and go to baseball a minute. The Detroit Tigers had a player who led Major League Baseball in strikeouts with 182 strikeouts in 1990. That's not good. His batting average was 277 that year, which was like the 2nd best batting average of his entire career. Not so hot. But he hit 51 home runs and 132 RBIs. That's Cecil Fielder. And that's 51 home runs in 1990 is a big deal. I know I jumped sports, and maybe it's not the world's best analogy, but everybody misses. The thing is, Brad Holmes has hit big more times. He's hit a lot more home runs than strikeouts. And his strikeouts have been more like ground outs, is what I would say on a lot of things. The Hendon Hooker pick was lauded by many. Look what Indianapolis is dealing with their former 1st-round pick from very recently, and a lot of other teams who have drafted quarterbacks in the 1st and 2nd round. Oh, by the way, Desmond Ridder just got cut too, guys. And so there's a lot of other guys that have been drafted high at quarterback. And you know what? You should draft a quarterback every so often. So I'm not just saying that Brad Holmes gets a pass, because James is right. You can critique. Yeah. But, man, show me someone who's doing it more consistently better. And even if somebody is, we're in the top 5. We're in the top 3. And you know what? A lot of organizations would like to be in this position, I think. So, all right. All right, so we talked about our position of strength, and that's our soapbox. Areas of concern, because let's be honest, there's always an area of concern. And Dan Campbell said this, Coach, there isn't a team without weaknesses or holes on its roster. And so that's reality. That's a great thing. He's not just saying things are perfect. He is accepting the reality of, hey, we got some weaknesses. And that's what they're doing and looking through to see what they can continually build with. I see the offensive line as a big question mark because you got some moving parts there. And so I think that's going to be a big question mark because the rest of the offense goes off of that. And so what are your thoughts on the offensive line, Coach?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, Glasgow moving in the center is great. Like we said, now we have veteran, rookie or second year player, veteran, rookie, and then Sewell. So, I mean, but Mahogany last year, we could see it. We could see it in those last 2, 3, 4 games that he played at. He's a dog. He's nasty. Ratledge looks like he's going to be. He did the same thing. There's going to be growing pains, but it's nice when you got the guy taking the snap behind the center. That's pretty dang smart, and that can check in and check out and move in and move out of plays. And you got so hopefully hopefully that doesn't come out. We have a short time of growing pains with the offensive line, and we withstand the defensive line until we get the whole cavalry back together. When we got the whole unit back together, then it should be really scary.
Yeah, and even right now, the interior defensive line is looking pretty good. I think it's just the depth on the defensive end position, and we can bring that up too. Zadarius Smith needs to just sign. It just needs to happen, and that will. We've been talking about it forever. They're going to bring at least somebody back, James, and or bring somebody in for defensive end. You're not going to just have 3. You'll at least have somebody on the practice squad. But those are really the only 2 areas I'm really concerned about right now. Do you feel similar on those spots, or is there anything else you see that's a concern?
Yeah, I feel pretty good about where the offensive line is at, really. I mean,
Okay.
Frazier's going to be coming back fairly soon. He's not a long-term injury or anything, so there's another backup on there. They kept Kingsley Egwakin to have another center. Cologne will be coming back
Mhm.
here at some point too. So they've got all kinds of options for depth on the offensive line. So I'm not really worried there too much. And it seems like Graham Glasgow's injury is not all that serious, like
Good
people were
point.
worried about at first. So um, I expect him to be back, by the Packers game. And to go back last year, Hogan Hatton also made the team as an undrafted free agent last year. Long
Okay.
snap.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for checking that out and also realizing he's back on the team again this year.
Yes.
Um, okay. Well, then, other thoughts on this Lions squad that we expect from this year? I think we're going to see some stuff on special teams, guys.
Mhm.
I think they're going to be a lot more aggressive on the kickoff this year. I've said this before. Coach Phipp has talked about how they lightened the load on what they put on Bates last year because he was so new. And they wanted him to focus on the field goal, so he wasn't trying to do too many things. Kind of like what you saw with Brian Branch his rookie year. They kept him in the nickel versus trying to keep him going back and forth because they thought about trying to cross-train him right away. And so I think you're going to see them doing a lot more of the kicks, partly because of the rule, but also because that's what they wanted to do as well, to try and get them to land in the landing zone or bounce or spin. And so I'm expecting a little bit more of that on the kickoff. That's something that he's had the off season, and so he didn't have that last year. I'm expecting that out of Bates. You know, any other things that jump out to you, things that you're thinking you're going to see, Coach, about the Lions offense or defense or just anything from the team before we start going into the games?
Deep balls. I think you're going to see more deep balls this year. So, it'll be
Yeah.
fun. Yep. Looking forward to it.
James, how about you? Anything you're going to see? I mean, that's great. We got those new coordinators, so.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see what those 2 guys do. But I mean, that's pretty much what everybody's looking at. But I'm also interested to see what Dave Phipp's going to do on special teams. Like you said, there were multiple coaches who kind of alluded to some of the things that he was thinking up.
Yeah.
Like they got stuff in the bag that's coming on special teams. And keeping 6 linebackers is, I think, part of that. They're gonna be using linebackers. They're gonna make teams earn those yards on the return on kickoffs. And so that's what I see the Lions trying to get some of that hidden yardage back again, more so this year, and using Bates's leg not to just kick it out of the end zone, but to make the other guy return the ball from the two.
Yeah, and or let Grant Stewart, one of those linebackers, be the return guy. I mean, we saw him almost break it all the way, and so
Mhm.
you're exactly right. I'm looking forward to that, and that linebacker talk we were talking about that. Heck, before training camp even started, just the Lions were seemingly grabbing every linebacker or tight end out there.
Right.
Um, I do think
Grant
another. Go ahead, Coach.
Grant Stewart was a running back when he first went to college. I found that out. So that's why the dude can run, but he's a linebacker.
Yeah.
Anyways, go ahead.
And I understand that there's concern from the outside about the Lions losing both coordinators. I do think one benefit is the Lions have actually brought so many guys back that were here last year that the learning curve is smaller. There's fewer guys to learn the system because they're not new. And the system's only tweaked. It's not a complete overhaul. You're not going from one concept to another. And so, and I think it's important with the depth guys. We have a lot of those guys back as well because they'll have to jump in. So, okay, this is where the rubber hits the road. We hit the pavement, right? The Lions. We've alluded. Some of us have said, gone on record, how many games the Lions are going to win. I was on 7-4 with Harrison Beebe, and I was put to the test, and I gave my answer. So let's go through it. We're going to break the schedule down into 4 different parts now that we know what the roster is. This isn't, the schedule just being released pre-training camp. I'm going to come out and say right now, guys, the Lions can win any game on this schedule. They are that good of a team. It won't be easy. And odds are they will not win every game on this schedule, but I'm just going to put it down there. I would not bet against them in any game. I mean, apparently they are the most the team bet against to make the playoffs. They're betting on them to miss the playoffs, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was like, all right, well, you have fun with that one.
Keep putting those bulletin board materials up. That's a poster that's in there right now. There's the odds.
Right. Oh, go ahead. All right, so we open the season at Green Bay, home for Chicago, at Baltimore, home for Cleveland. Those are the first 4 games. James, do you have an idea of any thoughts on those contests and or just an overall record? We don't have to go every game, but if anything jumps out at you.
Yeah, I think that they're going to take 3 out of those 4. I think that they will come. They will against Ben Johnson. They're going to come out guns a-blazing, and they're not going to lose to him. Cleveland is just I don't know. They're almost like a minor league team at this point. And then they take one of Green Bay or Baltimore. So they take 3 out of 4 out of those to start the season.
Well, Cleveland's down to 3 quarterbacks now, so that's good. They don't have 5 or 6 anymore.
I agree with that.
I'm going to agree with you. I think they take 3 out of 4 to open the season up. Coach, what are you thinking here?
I got 3 out of 4. Green Bay, new OC, new DC. Green Bay won't know what we're doing. Plus, we have a bunch of players back from injury. Week 2 against Chicago, we're home against our old OC. I already agreed with you on that. Week 3, I'd put an L on there. Tight game, better than the last time we were there. Lamar makes a play at the end. It's a learning experience for us. Week 4, Cleveland, we are at home. Even though it's a short week, we don't lose 2 in a row. So we'll be 3-1 in the first 4.
All right. And again, yeah. And we've had it last year where they won a game we didn't expect and vice versa. And so yeah. And you know what? You're really happy if they're coming out of the gate 3-1. And so I agree with all those things. I think the Ben Johnson thing is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I'm not loving open the season on the road, as we talked about, against Green Bay. I think the division game should be weeks 3 or 4, but you play the schedule they give you, right, Coach?
Yep. You got to play. You got to beat the best to be the best.
All right. So the next 5 weeks are only 4 games because they got the bye in there. You've got at Cincinnati, at Kansas City, home for Tampa Monday night, bye week, home for Minnesota, and then you go to Washington. No, you don't go to Washington. That's just 4 games
No,
there. That'll be the week after. So out of those 4 games, you got Cincinnati, KC, Tampa, and Minnesota. James, how are you looking at these 4 games, 5 weeks?
I think it's another 3-1. I think they can take Cincinnati, who does not have a defense, even with Trey Hendrickson in the fold. So I mean, you can just double team him and then dare the other 10 guys to beat you, and you're going to be playing from ahead. Uh, then Kansas City. Kansas City's kind of the wild card. I could see them losing that game. And then Tampa Bay, Minnesota. I'm gonna say wins in those games.
All right, so you got 3-1. All right, did you factor in the Taylor Swift factor for the Kansas City game?
But yeah, maybe I don't know. I don't know if he's going to get much of a bump in production out of that or not.
All right,
For
social media bump,
Mr.
but maybe
Swift.
not on the field.
Yeah, for Mr. Swift.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
yeah, social media showed his groomsmen were all referees.
There you go. Coach, what do you got for those 4 games?
I'm going to tell you right now, boys. I'm telling you 4-0, but let's go 3-1. There's going to be a stumble, and I'm going to tell you why. Cincinnati is away, but it's a short week for Cincinnati. They play a Monday night football game, and it's in Denver. Okay, all right. You guys follow
Yep.
me on this one?
Yep.
Kansas City, short week for KC. Travel, they play an 8-15 game. So again, another short week. Tampa Bay, of course, it's home Monday night football at home. I don't see us losing that one. It's going to be a tough one. Minnesota, okay, they're home. It's a win. It's after a bye, well rested. Okay, we may stumble, but I'm gonna roll with my travel and my one more day to prepare. But we'll say 3-1.
All right. I'm going to tell you, I would not argue with the 4-0 right there, but I'm going to go 3-1 because it all has to add up to what I have for their record at the end of the season. And I just got to leave one room for error. It's always good to leave room for error.
Yep.
All right. So then that puts us in, continuing with the month of November. We've got Washington and at Philly back-to-back weeks. Philly is Sunday night football. Then they're back home for the New York Giants before Thanksgiving. Then on Thanksgiving, they're home for Green Bay. And then the week after, they are at home for the Dallas Cowboys on a Thursday. So 2 Thursdays in a row. Coach, I'm going to have you go first this time and then have James go after. So we got 5 games here in this group.
You want me to
What's
run
your
the front?
breakdown?
Oh, now I got to change my numbers. You got me all messed up. All right, I can figure it out. So.
That's the NFL that got you messed up. I didn't add an extra game to the season.
All right, yeah, I always put that at the end. So Washington is away. I did this because we don't lose 2 games in a row. So I put Washington win or lose. Okay. Now, why I think we can win? We're not happy with the loss in the playoffs, and hopefully we'll have a full team. Okay, even though it's there. Philadelphia, okay, win or lose again could be a stumbling thing, but it's away. Philadelphia, short week, travel. They play Green Bay on the Monday night football before they play us. So that's the short week, and it's the travel, and it's a late game, okay? Giants at home. Giants are going to be a lot better. But again, if we do lose to Philly and we beat Washington, we can't lose to the Giants because we don't lose 2 games in a row. So we don't lose 2 in a row. So I'm going to stay with that one. Green Bay is a win. It's home. It's a short week, and we are going to win a Turkey Day game 2 years in a row. Okay, so it's a short week for both of us. And then we got Dallas in there. Dallas is home. It's a win. We're just a better team. So let's go probably 5-1 then. 4 maybe I'd say 5-1.
4-1 is 5 games.
4-1. I'm sorry, 4-1. That's 5 games. Yep, 4-1.
All right, man. Yeah, that
Okay.
math's not mathing, but wow. All right, that's awesome. And we have Dallas at home finally. Like 5 years in the waiting for that at least. James, what do you got for this section?
I'll say 4-1 as well. I think they split between the Washington and Philly games. I think that, and then they beat the Giants. Thanksgiving they got the monkey off their back that they can't win on Thanksgiving. So they beat Green Bay there, and then the Lions elevate Dan Skipper off the practice squad for Dallas, and he scores a touchdown in that win.
I like
that. Yeah, I like that. That's great. I'm between a rock and a hard place because I want to say 4-1, but if I say 4-1, it affects my final numbers. The reason I say it is I agree. I think they probably split between Washington and Philly. and I see them winning the rest of the game. So I probably have to go 4-1 here, guys, if I'm being realistic on that 3-game homestand right there. And yeah, so I'm gonna say 4-1, potentially 3-2, but I think 4-1. So, all right, the last four. I'm gonna give Coach just a minute to recalibrate because I did throw things off. So James, let's go with you. These final four. You've got. Let me. The final four is you fly out. And by the way, Coach has brought some great things up. A lot of our opponents aren't coming off the best rested weeks and best rested time when we're facing us. Now this one, we at least we have that Thursday night game, and then we have extra days off before we fly out to California. We play the Rams on Sunday, December 14th. Then we're back home for Pittsburgh, the last home game of the season for the Lions. And then on a short week, we're going to Minnesota for Christmas Day. And then the final game of the season is on the road in Chicago. James, what do you got for the last four?
Yeah, I mean the NFL did do the Lions dirty in the schedule in that they have to play 7 double-digit winning teams on the road and 11 total. So they did them dirty that way, but they may have made up for it. And like Jerry said, the Lions, I think, have the most net rest days over their opponents this year in the schedule. So they're going to be coming into a lot of their games with like one more day of rest than the other team. So
Nice.
that's going to help out. So I think that they similarly split with the Rams in Pittsburgh. You might have Pittsburgh coaching for his life there if Aaron Rodgers doesn't work out. And then end the season with two wins to clinch the NFC North.
Okay. So what do you have going with that final four there, James?
3-1.
3-1. Okay. Coach, how about you?
Well, I got, Los Angeles, they're a really good football team if Stafford's healthy. And it's out there and they're front first. So I said because of the long trip, really good football team, I felt that could be one of the losses. The two teams that I felt the losses were the Ravens, of course, and the Rams. I just felt those two, and then the splits with Washington and Philly. Pitt we're coming up. That's a home game, and it's a short week for Pittsburgh, and so they're in trouble. Minnesota, which is away, it's a win-loss. Again, it's Merry Christmas. These last two games will determine how the division goes. So which game do we need the most to win is the one I think we're going to do well on. And then the Bears game, we have a 10-day rest to get ready for them, you guys. We play on Christmas. Okay, we have a 10-day rest. So that's a win, I think 3-1. Okay, at the worst.
Okay. Well, if I went 4-1 for the previous 5, I'm going to have to amend this from 3-1 to 2-2, guys.
Okay.
Because I don't think the Lions are sweeping the division this year. I think we're going to lose a divisional game somewhere. And whether it's, and I don't know which one it's going to be, but I do think we'll lose a divisional game. And maybe, again, if Stafford's healthy, the Rams are a different team. In Pittsburgh, I don't know what they're going to look like at that point. So I'm going to have us, probably splitting one of those games, Minnesota, Chicago, and probably splitting either the Rams or Pittsburgh game as a likely thing. And I have to do that to math it up because I've got the Lions going 12-5. I've got them winning the division, but I've got them winning at 12-5. Vegas has them at 10.5. I've been pretty consistently saying I think they'll win probably 12 games. Coach, what did your numbers add up to for the Lions?
My best is they're 13-4. Okay, the worst 11-6. So your 12-5 is right in the middle. I just going back with some of those win-loss toss-up ones. If things all work out, the 13-4, I do not doubt they can have 13 wins. And I think I predict a little higher. I think I predicted last year 12-5, and I was off a little bit there. So hopefully 13-4, and I'm still off, but in the negative way.
Yes. And James, how about you? What did your number come to?
I think adding my 4 quadrants up, we came to 13-4. So I think that they can totally do that if Hutchinson and Goff are still standing at the end of the season.
All right, yeah, and I would not disagree with that. I'm building in that safe thing for the stumble, right? You guys are more daring than me, but I do think 12 what's that?
I'm an optimist.
Yeah, I am too.
As am I. And I didn't say where they would finish in the NFC because I don't know that part. But I do think they win the division. I've got the Packers and Vikings kind of fighting it out for that second spot. I kind of penciled them both in at 10-7. Followed by the Bears at 8-9. I think the Bears will be improved, but and they could be 9-8, and they could squeeze into the playoffs. But I think they'll be improved. But I don't see them moving out of that bottom spot. James, how did you have the rest of the division going?
Yeah, I could totally see it going that way. I could see where all four teams in the division could have winning records at the end of the year.
Yep.
I think the Bears are going to be a lot better than they were last season. I think the Packers have a chance to be better than last year, but they were what? They were 11-6 last year. So if Jordan Love gets back to the form he was at 2 years ago, the Packers are pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
They drafted a wide receiver for him in the first round. They've got some other good weapons. Doesn't look like week one they're going to have a lot of those guys, but I think throughout the season their offense is going to be pretty darn dangerous. The Vikings I think will be a good team again, but they're going to have some struggles with essentially a rookie quarterback taking over. He's going to have some games where he's going to struggle. So that's I think just something that's going to happen. Like, they basically didn't have Sam Darnold struggle until the last game of the season last year.
Good point. Coach, do you see the division kind of going that way? Do you see anything different than us?
No, no, I kind of agree. I think, like you said, those two are going to fight it out, and then the Bears are going to be coming up from the bottom. I don't know how much they can improve, how much their new coordinator is going to improve. I look at their running back field, and they like to run the ball. They're going to like to run the ball 30 times a game, and I'm not sure who the other three running backs are, but I feel the one that they do have is not going to tote the ball 18, 19 times a game because he's going to, never mind. Yep.
Yeah.
I see it the same way.
Yeah. All right. Well,
We know
we have
him.
to. We are running a little long on time, so we have to finish up. But we have a very important thing we need to talk about, and that is it's kind of twofold. One, and this is really important, and this is going to determine the Lions' record this year, I think. One, we're not going to talk about records quite as much this year, and the Lions were breaking every offensive record last year, and coach is like, see, this is why the only record that matters is 1-0.
Mhm.
And it's not just what we talked about, but Dan Campbell talked about this, you guys. And I think it's changing his whole approach, coach, to this season. And he said he put so much emphasis on we got to win the division, we got to get the number one seed. And he had all that. And then once they got it, it's kind of like, I mean, is there a psychological change that once you accomplish that, then it's like you can go, oh, wait, now we got to play again? I mean, I think Campbell's approach is going to be slightly different this year, and kind of talk about that a minute, Coach. I think this is really important, and this is going to drive the Lions postseason.
It is huge. Because it's a relief. Oh, we won the division. We're the number one seed. Okay, that's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to get to the Super Bowl. The ultimate goal is to win the Super Bowl. And again, you have to do all those little things. That's why I talk about 1-0 every week. And you can't, when you tell it, hey, we're gonna win the division this year. We're gonna win. We're gonna win our league this year, you guys. We're gonna win the league this year, and that's it. You win it, and then you have to. It's a relief. It's like, oh my God, I did it. Oh my God, I made it. It's when you run a marathon, you're going to go out and say, I'm going to finish it, or am I going to win it? Well, none of us are going to run a marathon, first of all. And if we did, well, you might. And if we did, you did. Yeah. And we may say, I'm going to finish the marathon. You don't care about your time.
Nope.
You just say you're going to finish the marathon. And that's the same thing with, I think, the Atlanta Lions. And I think he put the mental strain on that team last year with pulling guys off the street to fill in for injured spots every week. The Jared Goff thing, you're going to win this football game this week because our defense, we just pull guys off. It's on you. You better get it done. And that's not bad coaching. That's just mentally. And then you just can't. So I totally agree. I think Dan Campbell's doing right. The hunted thing where you're seeing everywhere, and it's going to be a weekly hunted, and they're going to just continue to hunt until they get to that last Sunday of the NFL season.
And James, I think Coach has hit on it. The mentality is, team, we need to get into the playoffs. Now, if we can win the division to get in, that's the first thing you can do, and that's the first step. But it's no longer we want to win the division and get the 1 seed. It's we want to get into the playoffs because our goal is to be playing the last game of the season, that last Sunday that Jerry just talked about. And so what are your thoughts on this, and do you kind of see this shift as being something that could be the right fuel for the season?
Yeah, I definitely think so. We saw how being the number 1 seed didn't exactly work out. Just plan it weak. You get into the dance, and then anything can happen. And we know the Lions are a good road team. So if they're not the number 1 seed, who cares? They've played exceptionally well on the road the last couple of years. I don't think it's necessarily near a priority, in part because of that. So that's about all I got. That
And you know what?
Chips. Coach is wearing his new hoodie, so fire up chips.
Yeah, fire up chips.
There you go. And that's all you need to have, because I think that's the focus of Campbell is just win the games and go 1-0, get into the dance, and then just get into the second season of the season, and then just take it 1 week at a time until there's no more games left on the schedule. Folks, we went really long. We appreciate you for sticking around with us. Coach, James, thank you both for everything. Folks, thank you for tuning in, for sticking around. Please tell your friends and family about the show. You can find us on social media as well as all major streaming platforms, including YouTube. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reviews. What are your season predictions? Put those in the comments. How do you see the division going, and what do you think the Lions' record's going to be? Check out more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.